recently got a batch of fine tip black pens from Jetpens, and I thought I'd just test them out today and see how they work in my Hobonichi. So whenever I have a new pen I want to test, I use one of these back pages as a testing place. So as you can see, I've done some stamping and different things back here. So I'm just going to make some marks with these because the very first thing I'm checking is whether they bleed through the page on the other side. So I'm going to make a mark with each of the pens. And then the next thing that I want to check is whether they're water soluble or whether they're permanent. So, because that's important, both can be useful, but it's important for me to know which are which. So with just a quick test here, I can see that they are not all permanent, at least. I don't know for sure which are which yet, but I'm getting out a sheet of Tomoe River paper, which is this kind of paper that the Hobonichi has, and I've written out the names of the pens so that I can really compare them. In the first column, I checked how easily they smudge right after I write it, because that's important for me to know on the Hobonichi. Then with the second column, I'm checking how they react with water. I do a lot of watercolor in my Hobonichi because I love how watercolor works on this paper. So it's important for me to know what my pen lines are going to do when they get wet. So I'm sorting out here which pens are water soluble, and I have the Stabilo sensor. These are all fine tip or small tip ones. The Stabilo 0.4, I labeled it wrong on the paper. It should be the Statler Triplus fine liner, the Ruchan Petite, and the Marvy Le Pen. And then the Pilot pen that I also threw in there. So that leaves me with 6 pens that are water soluble and the remaining 5 that are permanent, that did not bleed with water. So these are the pens, these 5 are the ones that I want to use when I'm drawing and do not want the line to bleed. They'll be good for writing that can be watercolored later without smearing the writing. And so I have in those, I have the Micron pen, which I've used for years, the Pitt Faber-Castell, the Unipen, the Sarasa, and the Tombow Mono, which has a very fine tip. It's a 0.01, so that could be handy as well. Sorted these to the water soluble ones on my left, to the permanent ones on the right, and now let's play with them a little bit in my Hobonichi planner. I've already sketched out a drawing on one of my daily pages, so I picked up my Stabilo sensor, which is one of the water soluble pens. So I'll show you how sometimes I actually like to use that. I have a little funky face here I'm drawing in. I got the idea from a piece of clay art that I saw on Instagram or somewhere, and just kind of modified it and did my own thing with it. but I'm using this water-soluble pen to draw in these lines here. Now I'm going to pull out my watercolors and paint in this image. And the thing I like about using the water-soluble pen is the way that black actually bleeds and just makes the piece look a little more loose and organic. I'm using that same Stabilo sensor pen to go back in and kind of redefine some details in the piece and add a little bit of embellishing. Now I'm turning to the pens that proved to be waterproof, and I'm going to use them for my next drawing. I'm setting aside the Micron pen because I'm already very familiar with it and love it. So I'm going to pick from one from the other four to use. And I chose the Unipen. I'm double checking my sheet here to confirm that I have them sorted out right and that this is indeed a waterproof pen. Now all of these pens were in this set from Jetpens were fine tip pens. They're range from 0.01 to 0.04. This particular one is a 0.02, so it proves to be plenty fine to do some of the details. I even kind of hinted at some bricks on this little house with this pen, and was very happy with how it worked. finish with erasing my pencil lines, then I'm going to use the Staedtler Triplus Fineliner from the list of water-soluble pens. It's a different one than I used on the face below, and I'm going to use it to dry in the shingles. I really thought it was pretty the way it bled and kind of separated into purples and blues and grays. So as I zoom in on the finished little house I painted, you can see how the roof reacted with the water. The other things pens are really important for is writing, and there's basically two types of writing I do. And one is where I do lettering, like the days of the week up at the top of the page, or this quote that I'm working on here. And so for those, I like to use a permanent pen so that I don't have to worry if I go back and add watercolor or something later. I don't have to worry about what's going to happen to my words. So both for lettering and for just my journaling, I like to use the more permanent pens. Although I do sometimes use like a regular ballpoint pen when I'm doing my journaling. I'm doing this lettering with the Sarasa pen, which has a little bit bolder tip than the other ones. I think it's maybe a 0.4. I'm not sure if it says. It calls itself a porous pen though, so it does have a little bit bolder look to it. I'm jumping to another little watercolor house that I've started, and I'm pulling out my collection of water-soluble pens, and I'm getting my little chart here again to refer to, and I'm going to pick out what I would like to use to add some water effect to this little house. Again, I really like these black pens to do the roof shingles. So I'm picking out one here. And I end up choosing this pen by Pilot that has a little bit of a blue tint, which I thought would look nice on this house. So I'm just going to go, I've already done a watercolor wash with Shadow Violet by Daniel Smith on there. But I'm just going to add some little shingle effect on there that I will add some water to and give it kind of that loose washy look. Now I'm flipping the page to check the back side, and you can see that it did not bleed through at all. While I'm here, I decide to also pick a pen to add some little bit embellishing to this watercolor bird that I've done. And at this time, I picked the Rouchon Petite pen. I have a little, it's very, very similar to the Lee pen by Marvy, and I end up going with the Rouchon though, and I just add a little bit of kind of feather work. I'm just kind of playing around here to see what I can do with these pens and to get a little bit of that bleeding effect on there as well. next little houses that I've already drawn in, I'm grabbing that Stabilo sensor again, and I'm using it to add a little shadow kind of underneath the houses, or at the bottom of the houses. Choosing another water-soluble pen for the roof on this house, and this time I'm choosing the Stabilo 0.88 black 0.4 size pen, and I will use it to kind of trace over. I've already drawn the shingles with a waterproof pen, but I'm going back with this pen, adding a second line so that I can give it a good wash, and I'm going to zoom in a bit so that you can see that a little better. I'll just finish up painting these two little houses. Before I put my pens away, I want a way to keep track of which ones are water soluble and which ones are permanent, so that I don't have to refer to my list every time. So I'm just taking a little bit of washi tape and wrapping around the end of the water soluble ones so that I'll know that to stop and notice that these are pens that are going to bleed when I use them. So I hope this has helped a little bit as you pick out pens for your own planner. I have a link in the description for the pens that I got from Jetpens, and I'll see you next time.